This isn't just another story. It's a question, a chilling thought experiment that begins not with a bang, but with a whisper. A series of strange, isolated incidents reported on the fringes of the news cycle. A sudden, unexplained quarantine in a remote village in the Alps. A panicked, garbled distress call from a fishing trawler off the coast of Iceland. A mysterious flu-like illness that spreads with alarming speed in a densely populated megacity, only for the reports to vanish as quickly as they appeared. This is the timeline we all lived, where strange anomalies were dismissed as natural disasters, isolated tragedies, or the paranoia of a few fringe voices. But what if it was something else? What if, behind the closed doors of power, the world's governments knew the truth long before we did? What if, in the cold light of a top-secret briefing room, they watched the first video footage of a reanimated corpse lurching to life, and made a choice that would seal our fate? Imagine the scene, a conference room with hardened military generals and stone-faced politicians, not discussing policy, but the end of the world. They aren't debating a response, they're debating a cover-up. Because a zombie outbreak, as they see it, isn't just a biological crisis, it's a societal one. The collapse of order, mass panic, the end of civilization as we know it. So they make a call, a terrible, calculated decision to manage the apocalypse instead of fighting it. They start by containing the virus, not eradicating it. They establish safe zones under the guise of pandemic response, funneling the uninfected into what they promise are havens of security, all while the infected are left to their gruesome fate. Think about the world we saw in the news. The new, stricter travel bans, the sudden mass military mobilizations for training exercises, the ubiquitous public service announcements urging calm and cooperation. Now, reframe it. What if the travel bans weren't to stop a new strain of flu, but to keep the infected from spreading across borders? What if those military drills were actually a massive, silent operation to establish a global grid of quarantine lines? A fortress built not to keep people out, but to trap the creeping horror within. Every seemingly innocent policy, every government memo, every piece of reassuring public propaganda was a meticulously crafted lie, and we, the public, were a captive audience in this great deception. The first hint of the lie would come in the small personal tragedies. You'd hear about a friend of a friend who went to the hospital with the flu and never came back. The official story would be a swift decline and peaceful passing, but the family would recount a frantic, terrifying phone call, a plea for help that was cut short by a sound no one could explain. The news would be a well-manicured garden of half-truths. The body bags you saw on TV weren't from a natural disaster. They were from the initial, contained outbreaks that were being systematically cleaned. But you, the viewer, wouldn't know this. You'd just see the somber reports, feel the distant ache of a shared human tragedy, and move on with your day. The government's plan, so chillingly simple, was to let the virus burn through the population in isolated, manageable pockets. They wouldn't fight the zombies, they'd let them devour the unsuspecting. The infected would become a silent, horrifying cleanup crew, culling the weak, the uncooperative, and the unwitting. The official story would be that certain areas were lost to a mysterious, aggressive illness, and that these regions were now no-go zones for our own safety. But those zones wouldn't be empty. They'd be filled with the shambling, monstrous remnants of humanity, a living, breathing testament to a government's dark bargain. Now, let's go deeper. Imagine you are a journalist, one of the few who senses the cracks in the official narrative. You notice a pattern. The areas hit worst by the illness are often economically depressed, less connected, and less likely to have family members in positions of power. You get your hands on a leaked military memo, a document so heavily redacted it's almost a piece of abstract art. But one phrase leaps out at you: controlled population reduction protocols. You realize that the safe zones weren't meant to save everyone. They were meant to save the right people, the politicians, the scientists, the elite who were deemed essential for rebuilding. And the rest of us? We were left to the whims of a quiet, creeping apocalypse. What would you do with this knowledge? How would you get the truth out when every media outlet is a puppet of the state? Your phone calls are monitored, your emails flagged, and the people you once trusted now look at you with fear in their eyes. You're not just fighting a government, you're fighting a global conspiracy of silence, a conspiracy so vast that it seems almost a part of the air you breathe. Would you risk your life to expose a truth that might shatter the last vestiges of hope and plunge the world into the very chaos the government was trying to prevent? The tension would build not in a single explosive moment, but in a slow, suffocating dread. The news reports of missing persons would begin to escalate. The safe zones would become more militarized, their gates looming like a threat rather than a promise. The reassuring speeches on television would become more and more strained, a thin veneer of calm over a deep reservoir of panic. You'd start to see the signs everywhere: the odd, blood-splattered window in a city that's supposedly safe, the sudden, unexplained sirens in the dead of night, the haunted, vacant look in the eyes of the soldiers who stand guard, their humanity slowly being eroded by the terrible things they've seen and the horrific secrets they've been forced to keep. The climax of our story isn't a massive battle or a heroic sacrifice. It's a single, quiet revelation. You finally manage to smuggle out a video, a recording from a whistleblower, an anonymous military officer who couldn't live with the guilt. The video is shaky, grainy, and silent, but what it shows is unmistakable. It's a drone's eye view of what was once a bustling city square, now a desolate wasteland. But it's not empty. It's filled with the shuffling, moaning figures of the undead, a tide of them being systematically pushed by military vehicles toward a massive, fiery trench. The caption on the video reads, "The Quarantine of Sector 7. When this video finally makes its way to the world, it won't be a call to arms. It won't be a moment of mass revolution. It will be a moment of profound, soul-crushing silence. The world will stop, not in anger, but in disbelief and horror. The realization that the very institutions we trusted to protect us have been using us as a buffer, a living shield against a horror of their own making, will be a blow that no society can withstand." The government's lie wasn't just to save themselves. It was to preserve a twisted form of order, a world where the majority were sacrificed for the survival of the few. The final image is not one of a hero, but of us. What if we are zombies? Not the shambling undead, but the walking, unthinking masses who blindly followed the news, who never questioned the official story, who were so afraid of a visible enemy that we failed to see the quiet, insidious evil that was being perpetrated by our own leaders. We chose to trust, and that trust was used to create a silent, slow-motion apocalypse that we never even saw coming. So as you go about your day, look closely. Are the news reports what they seem to be? Are the official explanations for strange events truly the whole truth? What if the apocalypse isn't a sudden, cataclysmic event, but a slow, quiet decay that is happening all around us right now as we speak? What if, in our search for monsters, we have forgotten to look at the people pulling the strings? And what if, in the end, the most frightening thing isn't the virus that destroys us, but the lie that allows it to happen?